You've probably asked yourself this question in the quiet of your room, when the world is completely asleep and your heart is still wide awake. How can someone look at you with all that warmth in their eyes, tell you they love you, and then walk away as if that love was never enough to make them stay? It feels like a cruel twist you can't wrap your mind around. You replay every single conversation, searching for the one red flag you missed, trying to decode the silence that came after all their promises. The confusion gnaws at you because deep down, you know their feelings were real. You felt it, you saw it, you lived in it. So why did they leave? What if the reason they left had nothing to do with how much they loved you, and everything to do with a hidden barrier you never even knew existed? The truth is, when someone loves you but still leaves, it's rarely about an absence of love. It's about everything else surrounding it. The invisible layers that remain unseen until it's too late. Right now, your heart is begging for answers because without them, moving forward feels completely impossible. You wonder if love isn't enough, if you weren't enough, or if every deep connection is doomed to fall apart no matter how hard you fight for it. But before you let those dark thoughts define your story, you need to hear this. Love is a foundation, but a foundation alone cannot hold up a house if the walls are completely broken. The first unseen reason someone walks away is the fatal confusion between a feeling and a choice. Love, in its rawest form, is an emotion. It's chemistry, warmth, and attachment. But staying is an operational, daily decision. It requires effort, compromise, and the willingness to stand in the storm when the initial emotional high fades away. A person can feel an overwhelming amount of affection for you, but if they lack the internal maturity to make the daily choice to stay, their feelings will always fall short when real life demands action. Think about how many times you have seen someone genuinely care about a dream, a career, or a passion, yet fail to put in the daily work required to maintain it. Feelings are easy because they happen to us passively. Choices are hard because they require active sacrifice. When someone experiences the emotional swell of love, it feels infinite. But when the reality of partnership demands that they sacrifice their convenience, face their fears, or show up consistently when things get uncomfortable, their lack of structural capacity reveals itself. They didn't lie when they said they loved you. They simply reached the maximum height of what their emotional capacity could support. What happens when a person realizes that loving you requires a level of courage they simply do not possess? When faced with that gap between their feelings and their capacity, most people panic. They start to feel an overwhelming sense of guilt because they can sense your depth and they know they cannot match it. They see how wholehearted your commitment is, and instead of rising to meet you, they feel dwarfed by it. It creates an internal pressure cooker. Every kind gesture you make, every vulnerable moment you share, and every plan you outline for the future becomes an unintended reminder of what they are failing to bring to the table. They begin to associate the relationship not with pure joy, but with the quiet shame of their own inadequacy. And because human beings naturally run away from feelings of shame, they eventually make the decision to exit. They retreat to a space where less is demanded of them, where they don't have to look in the mirror every day and see their own limits reflected back in your eyes. If their exit was driven by their own hidden shame, why does your mind insist on convincing you that you were the one who failed? It happens because your brain is desperately searching for control. When someone suddenly walks away from a deep connection, it shatters your sense of safety. If love can just end, if someone can look you in the eye and say they care for you and still pack their bags, then the world feels chaotic and unpredictable. To make sense of that chaos, your mind makes a tragic bargain. It decides that it is better to blame yourself than to accept that you had no control over their limitations. You tell yourself, if only I was prettier, if only I was quieter, if only I didn't demand so much attention, if only I held back my true feelings. You create a fantasy where your flaw was the catalyst, because if your flaw caused them to leave, then in theory, fixing yourself could make them come back. But that is a trap. It is a psychological illusion designed to protect you from the terrifying reality that you can give your absolute best to someone, love them with every fiber of your being, and still be left behind by a person who simply wasn't ready to carry it. Have you ever stopped to calculate how much of yourself you destroyed, just trying to keep someone else comfortable? Look back at the final months, weeks, or days before the break occurred. Replay those moments honestly. Notice how many times you swallowed your own voice just to keep the peace. Notice how many times you minimized your own needs because you could sense their foot was already halfway out the door. You became an expert at reading their shifts in temperature, walking on eggshells, convincing yourself that if you just provided enough space, enough patience, and enough understanding, they would finally settle in and realize what they had. But love is not an auction where the highest bidder of self-sacrifice wins the prize of commitment. Pouring more of your life force into a bucket that has a hole in the bottom doesn't fill the bucket. It just drains you dry. What if all that energy you spent trying to save them was actually preventing you from seeing the second, even more dangerous barrier, standing between you and the peace you deserve? Here is Section 2 of Part 1, continuing directly from Section 1, adding another approximate 1,000 words toward our 3,000+ word total. That brings us directly to the second hidden barrier, unaligned life visions, and the silent destruction of bad timing. You can have two people who are hopelessly drawn to one another, whose souls feel like they speak the exact same language. But if they are walking in two completely different directions, that connection will eventually turn into immense friction. One person is ready to build a permanent home, lay down roots, and step into emotional maturity, while the other is still desperately running from their own past, seeking distraction, or clinging to a version of themselves that isn't ready to settle down. One person craves depth and radical honesty, while the other is utterly terrified of being truly seen. No matter how much affection exists between you, love cannot bridge a gap when two people want entirely different futures. When someone finally realizes that their fundamental vision of life doesn't match yours, they often walk away. Not because they stopped caring, but because they know that staying will force one of you to destroy your own dreams. It stings because you start thinking that if you had just compromised a little bit more, maybe they would have stayed. But ask yourself this: what if changing your entire identity just to keep them was actually the very thing that would have destroyed the love you were trying to save? Think about what happens when you alter your trajectory for someone else. You shrink your ambitions, you dim your light, and you quiet your boundaries just to stay in their orbit. You tell yourself that timing is just an excuse, that if two people care enough, they can overcome any circumstantial hurdle. But life isn't a movie script where passion magically aligns two incompatible paths. If someone's core desire is freedom and yours is deep commitment, staying together forces a quiet resentment to grow beneath the surface. Every day they stay, they feel trapped. Every day you try to hold them, you feel insecure. Eventually, that tension snaps when they walk away under the weight of that misalignment. It feels like an unexpected abandonment to you. But in their mind, it was an inevitable exit they saw coming miles away. They realized that loving you halfway was doing more damage than leaving you completely. If their departure was actually an act of radical alignment, why does your heart still insist on treating it like a personal rejection? Because your heart doesn't think in terms of logistics or future trajectory. It thinks in terms of attachment. When you form a bond with someone, your brain wires itself to expect their presence, their voice, and their comfort. When that presence is suddenly revoked, your nervous system goes into panic mode. It doesn't care that their life goals didn't match yours, or that their emotional timeline was completely out of sync. It only knows that the person who felt like home is suddenly gone. This is where the mind begins to play cruel tricks on you. You start romanticizing the connection, remembering only the late-night talks, the tender glances, and the promises made in quiet moments. You completely erase the subtle hesitations, the delayed text messages, the emotional distance, and the micro-withdrawals that were happening long before the actual breakup. You focus entirely on the warmth of the fire while forgetting that the house was slowly burning down around you. What if the signs were always there, but your capacity to love made you willfully blind to their inability to stay? That brings us to the third unseen reason: an internal battle you could never have fought for them. Sometimes, people walk away because the sheer intensity of a healthy, genuine love brings all of their unhealed trauma directly to the surface. When you offer someone real safety, respect, and unconditional care, it acts like a giant mirror. It forces them to confront their own deepest insecurities, their fear of failure, and their core beliefs about whether they are actually worthy of happiness. If a person secretly carries a hidden core belief that they are fundamentally broken, defective, or destined to hurt others, receiving your pure, untainted affection won't heal them. It will deeply terrify them. Instead of leaning into the safety you provide, their internal alarms start going off. They feel like an imposter in your life, waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for you to discover who they really are, and leave them first. So to protect themselves from that imagined future pain, they strike first. They panic and retreat. They leave not because you failed to give them enough love, but because they couldn't carry the weight of being loved so deeply while feeling so empty on the inside. This leads to the most agonizing question of all. If your purest love cannot heal someone else's brokenness, then what were you actually trying to save them from? You were trying to save them from themselves. But here is the hard, unvarnished truth you need to internalize today. You cannot be a sanctuary for someone who is determined to live in their own storm. You cannot love someone into health. You cannot give someone enough safety to erase their lifelong fear of commitment. When you try to act as the healer in a relationship, you stop being a partner and start being a cushion for their unaddressed wounds. And while they may appreciate the comfort you offer, they will eventually resent the dynamic because it reminds them of their own weakness. They walk away to escape the mirror you represent. They go back to environments, habits, or people that demand less of them, where their flaws aren't highlighted by your consistency. It is a profound tragedy, but it is their tragedy, not your failure. So, if their exit was driven by their own unhealed battles, and love alone wasn't enough to conquer their internal chaos, what does that mean for the way you view love moving forward? That brings us to the fourth reason people walk away, despite genuine affection. Love is not a substitute for true compatibility. We've been conditioned by romantic movies, songs, and books to believe that love is this magical, unstoppable force that conquers all obstacles. We're taught that if two people just care about each other enough, everything else will magically fall into place. But real life teaches a much harsher, undeniable lesson. Love without trust, emotional bandwidth, open communication, and active effort will struggle and eventually collapse under the weight of reality. You can be someone's safest harbor, their absolute favorite human being, and their greatest source of joy. And they can still choose to leave because their personal fears, limitations, and ingrained habits outweigh their willingness to grow. Their departure doesn't erase the magical moments you shared, nor does it make the love you felt a lie. It simply proves that love, as beautiful as it is, was never meant to carry the structural weight of a partnership all by itself. So where does that leave you right now? Sitting in the silence, holding the broken pieces of a story you never wanted to end. It leaves you at the most pivotal crossroad of your life, facing the single most powerful shift you will ever make in your entire healing journey, the conscious decision to separate someone's love from their choice. When you finally learn to blend those two things apart, everything changes. Up until now, you have been viewing their choice to leave as direct proof that their love wasn't real, or worse, that you were not enough to keep them. You've chained your self-worth to their exit, telling yourself a painful lie that if you were just a little more attractive, a little more patient, a little wealthier, or a little more exciting, they would still be standing right beside you. But when you step back and look at the bigger picture, you begin to see the profound truth. Someone can genuinely love you with all the limited capacity they have, and still lack the maturity, courage, and readiness to choose you for the long haul. When you start to see their departure as a statement about their limits rather than a verdict on your value, how does your heart finally begin to breathe again? It breathes because the heavy, suffocating weight of self-blame begins to melt away. You stop replaying old text messages at 2 a.m, searching for the exact moment the shift happened. You stop rehearsing imaginary conversations in your head, coming up with speeches you think could somehow convince them to turn around and fix what was broken. You surrender the exhausting, soul-crushing addiction to decoding their past actions, and you turn your eyes back toward your own life. You realize that you don't need a final conversation, a tearful confession, or a scripted apology from them to get closure. Closure is not a gift that an ex hands to you on their way out the door. Closure is an internal boundary you build for yourself when you decide that you will no longer leave the door wide open for someone who willingly chose to step outside. What if the closure you've been desperately praying for isn't an explanation from them, but a realization about what you truly deserve? The real realization is this: you deserve a love that isn't just felt in passive emotions, but proven through active, unflinching commitment. You deserve someone who doesn't panic when things get deep, who doesn't run when vulnerability is required, and who doesn't make you feel like you are hard to love just because you have real emotional needs. The right person will look at your depth, your devotion, and your care not as an overwhelming burden to escape, but as a priceless treasure to protect. They won't leave you guessing where you stand, walking on eggshells, or begging for basic consistency. Their love won't just exist in quiet, romantic moments. It will show up in the way they handle conflict, the way they align their future with yours, and the way they stand firmly beside you when life gets difficult. If that is the level of love you were built to give and receive, why are you still mourning the loss of a connection that required you to shrink just to survive it? You are mourning it because grief is the natural price we pay for having the courage to open our hearts. Missing them doesn't mean you made a mistake by letting go, nor does it mean you belong back in that relationship. It simply means that what you gave was real, that your heart works, and that you are a human being capable of profound connection. Do not rush your healing, do not judge your tears, and do not pretend you are okay when you are hurt. Every ache you feel right now is proof of your immense capacity to care. But do not allow that grief to trick you into self-abandonment. Do not let one person's inability to match your depth convince you that you need to lower your standards for the next person who comes along. What happens to your future the moment you decide to take all the love you wasted on holding them together and finally give it back to yourself? That is the moment your real transformation begins. You stop viewing their exit as a tragic rejection of who you are, and you start seeing it as a divine protection for who you are becoming. You realize that their departure created necessary space in your life, space that was previously filled with anxiety, uncertainty, and one-sided effort. That empty space feels uncomfortable and lonely right now, but emptiness is not a curse. Emptiness is a clean canvas. It is an invitation to rebuild your life on your own terms, to reconnect with your forgotten passions, to strengthen your boundaries, and to cultivate a level of self-worth that no person's departure can ever take away from you. Their leaving didn't mark the end of your story. It simply closed the chapter on a love that was too small for the future you are destined to build.